We are live. It is 6:10. Welcome to Tuesday's Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Open Space Subcommittee. I am your chair, Delegate Regina T. Boyce, and we're going to have a really good evening. I think we're going to be thorough. I want to first and foremost give a shout out to Delegate Ruth and Delegate Allen for leading on the floor today. Delegate Jacobs, the next time we got to get you a bill with amendments. I am so sorry, but we're going to get you. But again, we're going to be spreading the opportunity. I think people should have experience again on the floor. And so, and if you notice on the House floor, a lot of different people were leading on bills, and I think it's important. So as the opportunities come up, as one of our colleagues mentioned last week, they are not interested in doing so. I appreciate them for letting me know. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I also don't want to not give anybody an opportunity. So I want to put that there. To our guests, welcome. And just as a reminder for our teammates here, that should we have a question, please feel free to ask a question of our guests, but reminding guests that your participation is as needed by the team. And so with that, we're going to get started. We have 5 bills. We're going to go through HB 90, hopefully fairly quickly. And the next 4 bills are really up for discussion. And I would say we'll spend maybe 10 to 20 minutes, however it goes on them each, and then hopefully have good discussion, get some clarifications where there needs to be clarifications, and hopefully by the end we have maybe some ideas about where we want to go or decide that we need to make more discussion. So with that, HB 90, you should have gotten a reprint of what Delegate Foley's bamboo bill will be. There was a desire to do something, but not potentially in the way that the bill was currently was written originally. So Kristen, you want to go through it?
Sure. So as Delegate Boyce mentioned, a new reprint was sent out on the local authority to regulate bamboo. And so what those amendments do, they incorporate the sponsors amendments that would have applied this enabling authority to both counties and municipalities. It also updates the reference to bamboo to invasive bamboo rather than running bamboo. And the main amendment is that it authorizes the governing body of a county or municipality by ordinance to regulate invasive bamboo, including by prohibiting a person from selling invasive bamboo, planting invasive bamboo, and allowing invasive bamboo to grow on the property of the person without proper upkeep and appropriate containment measures. The bill's provision relating to the enforcement have been taken out, and instead language is added to authorize a local government to enforce an ordinance under the bill by requiring any damages caused by invasive bamboo be mitigated and establishing a civil fine.
Are there any questions about the bill, which the sponsor did approve? Although I thought, yes. She approved this bill. I've been talking with her back and forth about the committee's desires about what they would like to do. And so are there any questions about the new version of the bill? Are there any clarifications needed regarding the bill? Is there a desire to move the bill's amendments and then move the bill as amended?
May I make a motion?
To?
Move the amendments?
Is there there's a second? All in favor of the amendments to HB 90, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Is there a desire to move the bill as amended?
Move the bill.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No. Who's that? Is that Otto? Okay, we got 1 no. And so, all righty. Thank you so much. And thank you for your work on this. Everything you guys talked about, I went back to the sponsor. And so this will be something, even if it just gives local authorities something to work with. We're going to go to HB 30.
5:30?
5:30.
5:30. Delegate Kurzbill, Natural Resources, Forest Mitigation Banks, and the Forest Conservation Fund.
You might want to skip past this one as it's wholly included with the amendments in House Bill 723.
Okay, so let's skip down to 612. HB 612 Natural Resources Licensed Tree Expert Alterations.
Okay. This is the bill that we discussed last week, and with the amendments, I think it was really down just a bit, it's down to a policy choice. The bill is intended to address situations where persons basically rent out their license for others to work under. And then it was pointed out correctly that, you know, if you have one person, say a patriarch that runs a company and he passes away or is incapacitated or something like that, that they could, you know, be forced to stop business. And that's true. But they do have some options. They have some options. They could get a license or they could hire a licensee and they could, you know, be right back up in business. This is a policy choice for the committee.
Delegate
Where we
Tarasa.
stand now.
Okay, so we have two questions. Well, one question and one comment, or maybe two questions, but has this been amended since we last looked at it?
No, it's the same amendments.
Same
Okay.
amendments.
Okay, so I was very concerned about that, and I talked to Delegate Watson's Chief of Staff about it, and now I'm a little confused about the information I got from him versus what Patrick's saying. So I just want to get some clarification. My understanding is that any project that was already approved by the arborist, the licensed arborist, the workers could continue to work on projects that have been already approved by a licensed arborist. Is that true?
That may be true. I don't know.
I
What's that?
think it sounds true, Delegate Tarasa. What I think, and Patrick can clarify, I think what he was talking about, there was a discussion about if somebody dies and they're the
Right.
licensee and the ability of those workers then to work. I
Yes.
think for you to be able to work, and I think it sounds like the option is they would have to hire somebody else to be able to work under that license, potentially even if they had hiring or they had their work, quote unquote, work orders under that particular license. Because I think you still need somebody, if I'm correct, Patrick, to be liable.
I don't know about the licenses that were, I mean, the work orders that were in place while the licensee, we could check on that, but
Okay.
going forward, they wouldn't be able to take.
Yeah, because that would make a big difference to me, because what I don't want to do, I understand if you don't have a licensed arborist, you're going to have to get one. But what I don't want to see is people who work, you know, who live paycheck to paycheck, you know, who are working, not have work for the next week or so while they're, you know, while that's all being figured out or they're looking for other jobs. I was very concerned about that interim timeframe. So it would be very important to me personally, I don't know about the rest of the committee, subcommittee, but to make sure they could still do those projects or they could keep working for some period of time.
Okay, Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is similar to something that Delegate Ruth said the other day, but I had a roughly 150-foot tulip poplar that had a huge crack in it and was rotten most of the way up, taken down yesterday. And watching that operation with a guy, you know, up in a bucket truck, literally 100 feet off the air, and it's right in front of my solar panels, and there are just a million things that can go wrong. I was just really struck by how grateful I was to have a company that I know, you know, the guy up in the bucket truck is a licensed arborist and, you know, licensed and insured. And as a consumer, to me, that's basic consumer protection, but also I really worry about people hiring particularly undocumented immigrant workers, not training them properly and sending them off to do what is some of the most dangerous work. I think it is the most dangerous profession in the country. I think it's worse than farming. So I appreciate what you're saying, Delegate Taras, I really do, but every small business has a responsibility to create some kind of succession plan, or even just plan for when people get sick or, go away. So I feel like this bill is badly needed.
That's fair. Thank you for those. Yes, thank you for that, Delegate Ziegler. I would agree it is dangerous. I've seen a tree taken down in a way that I don't know how they did it, but it was like a rope and a blade, and it was pretty crazy. But I saw it. Delegate Stein and then Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the issue of whether, let's say the licensee passes away, I read the bill as saying all work would have to stop until you hire someone new, because the bill's provisions deal with relationship between someone who's working for a company and, in connection with someone who's licensed, not the project. So that's just my 2 cents on that issue.
Yeah. And it says employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight, or a company or a licensed expert.
So can I just follow up? Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Delegate Terrazzo.
Just in response to that point, I just lost what you said, but you said something under the supervision. And I think what was told to me was that it is under the supervision of that licensed arborist, if it's the work plans have been approved by that arborist. So I do hear what Delegate Stein is saying about the reading of it, and I don't know how to clarify that, but that at least that was what was told to me in terms of the what under the supervision means. Like they said that, for example, if the arborist goes on vacation for 2 weeks, work can continue. They just need to have approved projects.
Well, if he dies, he can't.
Well, can no longer, right, there will be no future projects, but anything that was already approved.
But it also doesn't say they have to physically be there, that it's really the license and not necessarily the person. So, in the case of somebody being away, they're working under that license. They're first employed by the licensed tree expert, and then employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight. And the question is what does oversight mean, right?
Yes.
Right. Delegate Allen, Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, just kind of echoing what Delegate Stein said, every company is obligated to have those sorts of succession plans. And I think this bill incentivizes, or at least not even incentivizes, I would say mandates essentially.
Yeah, Delegate Ziegler said that
a company have a plan, have a plan or a second personal payroll. All that being said, though, if there's concern among the subcommittee about that, could we add language or amend language to further clarify what we were just talking about, that, that in the event of an untimely death or something along those lines of the license holder, then all approved projects can continue, and, no new projects can be approved until a new license holder is brought in or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think yes, I would agree. I think there just needs to be clarification, because it says a person may not physically engage in the work of the treatment, care, or removal of trees unless the person is. It's employed by, and so the employed by would, to me, say that you're, again, working under a contract. Employs a licensed trees expert, somebody who is there and can provide oversight. I don't know. I think before I call on Delegate Jacobs, Patrick, we may need like a clarification of what those specific, the 1 through 4 actually means, like physically, like what does that actually look like? Delegate Jacobs.
What we're trying to get at is the selling of the license.
True.
correct?
Right.
Because, I mean, you know, when you're a licensed contractor, you're a licensed tree expert, whatever, you know, if someone is using your license number in their daily activities, then you are responsible. And, you know, and obviously, if you're responsible, then you should be responsible for the supervision as well. But I think what we're trying to get here is that there has been a practice of selling that license with no supervision. Right? That's what we're trying to fix. I mean, they can't operate till somebody's hired. I think that's not even really relevant. You know, if it's a company, it's going to get somebody in place. But what we're trying to address is the people that are selling their license number with no intent of supervision or even really their job. You know what I'm saying? It's not even their responsibility. They're just selling their license, which should be against the law.
Yeah.
That's what we need to address.
Yeah, and there's really no language in there about the penalty of such a thing.
I think that's the simpler solution, really, is to address the illegal sale or whatever way you want to phrase it.
Yeah, it seems like
if you're under a license, there's certain criteria that's there. I mean, the responsibilities there, you know, the being some sort of foreman, you know, somebody's going to be in charge of that job operating under a legal license and all that. I think that's all going to be in place. But if somebody's selling their license with no intent of oversight, then that's the problem. They're just selling.
I don't think that's illegal right now. That's the problem. And that's what this
I know,
language
that's what we need to
address.
fix, is that part, in my opinion.
so. What I hear you saying, Delegate Jacobs, I think to Patrick's point is, I think the 4 steps, you know, these 4 lines speak to that. But I'm hearing you say that you would probably be comfortable with something explicitly stating that.
Well, I think that's what we're trying to achieve. That's my take on it anyway.
Well, my take on it as well is that the folks who were renting out their license are otherwise renting their license out to individuals who don't have the experience and therefore aren't being supervised. And so
Well, that's the same thing.
Well, yeah. So I think some of the language does get at that when we talk about, you know, whose license are you under? If someone sold me a license, I mean, whether it's the company or the person employed, that person would have to have the license. So if I rent a license from, you know, Nick's Trees Are Us, right? And I've got Boyce Timber and Co., but I've got nobody on my team, nor myself, who is licensed. Like, to a degree, I guess I would fall. I mean, I think what people think is I fall under Nick's license, but when in actuality, there isn't one within the possession of my organization. Therefore, I would not be in compliance, is the way I understand it. We're gonna get there. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do think that the 4 points that are in the bill address the issue of renting out a license. But to Delegate Terrasa's point, I wouldn't be opposed to adding a minor amendment to say, in the event of, you know, the death or incapacitation of the supervising tree expert, that any project which the supervising tree expert has already, you know, approved a plan for could continue. But I also wondered if DNR could weigh in on this issue.
Is somebody from DNR here?
Yes.
Paul or Will? Oh, Emily. Hey, Emily.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Help us.
Thank you. Well, I will try. It definitely is a confusing part of statute, but I did go back and ask our forestry folks after the last subcommittee meeting when the issue of the death of the LTE would happen. And what happens in that instance, or what can happen in that instance, is if another I say LTE, licensed tree expert, if another LTE wants to come in to help out, to continue that business upon the death of the original LTE, then the new LTE would notify our forestry unit that they are taking over as the LTE for that business. Then they would add that company to his or her license and submit a letter stating that he or she agrees to the arrangement. And then the supervised company would also submit insurance policy and a letter stating that they agree to the arrangement.
So Emily, thanks for that. So, but the question that I then have is that the new LTE then essentially somewhat acquires the business per se? Because it's a little scary, because what we're saying is that, well, you can use our license, you can finish the work, but once the work is finished, it sounds like it would be somewhat the end of the organization, unless the licensee is then providing work that they then would perform under that license.
Right. I don't know that we get into the selling or the renting of licenses themselves. What we're saying is that a new licensed tree expert could come in and be the licensed tree expert for those employees who just lost their LTE due to death or something.
But Madam Chair,
Yes.
in that situation, though, it sounds like the licensed tree expert is going to be working for multiple companies, which doesn't seem like it would fall under the provisions of this bill as amended, where they have to actually be an employee of the company, and then they would have to be an employee of two companies.
I do believe, as it is amended, that they would need to become an employee then of the company.
Well, the bill also says is employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight. It sounds like to me in the acquisition of the LTE, kind of like taking over the old company, they would be essentially is now employed by.
Right.
That's
How I think that's how our folks interpreted the amended version.
Delegate Terasa, then Delegate Jacobs.
And thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess what I was hoping to hear from, is it Emily Wilson?
Yes.
Sorry, she just turned her camera off. I hope
That's okay.
But was basically what it means to be, wait, what was the, I'm so sorry. Under the oversight of a licensed tree expert, like, is that for the purposes of the plan that so let's say there's a plan for the tree removal, tree removals for several projects for the rest of the week. Could they continue under that if the tree expert were no longer alive or was incapacitated? Like, what does that oversight mean?
I don't believe we read it that way. And let me also clarify that a lot of jobs for licensed tree experts are one-day jobs. They go from one job to another on a daily basis, if you will.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't understand what you mean. You don't read it which way?
That they can continue to work.
Okay.
You're right.
Thank you.
And to the point that it's a one-day job after the day it's done,
Right.
Delegate Terasa, is that it, or do you have another question?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is that you've got, I really just don't know how this industry works, but what I was thinking is, you're not getting you're not getting a contract to do tomorrow's work today. Most likely you have a schedule that you're on, I'm assuming, and when you're going to be in this neighborhood, when you're going to be in that neighborhood. So I don't know to what extent those plans are approved or whether they just show up and look at the tree and do whatever they need to do.
Right. So what we believe the bill as amended says, and Patrick, weigh in too if you'd like, if you agree or disagree, but the way the bill is amended, you cannot physically do the work of trees unless you are under the supervision of an LTE. And if that LTE passes away, then the day after that LTE passes away, you cannot, if you're not a licensed tree expert yourself, then you cannot do tree works under this statute.
Emily wanted me to weigh in. I personally, and I defer, to a degree, would want to talk to the sponsor's aide, who got some information somewhere apparently, but I don't see how the word oversight continues to live on past the licensed tree expert. I mean, oversight doesn't just mean that you sign a contract.
That's a good point.
And I guess the question about oversight is, what does that actually mean? Like, is it physically standing there on the site, watching it, or oversight in that if something happens, that licensed tree expert or the company who has the license is liable? Delegate Ziegler, Delegate Jacobs, and then Delegate Ruth, and then I think we'll round it close.
I just want to make the point that while it's not, it's certainly something worth discussing. Hopefully, the death of the business owner is not something that would happen very often.
It's probably on the job.
Well, in which case, we need people who know what they're doing. But I mean, as I say, I don't think it's that frequent. Not that it isn't important.
Possible, right, or important, yeah. Good point. Delegate Jacobs and Delegate Ruth.
Delegate Boyce, we were talking about if LTE they would have to be employees under that, but suppose a company, it was a family-run organization and the owner died, but his wife wanted to continue the business on. Maybe they have family members they wanted to bring up eventually, but that LTE could be an employee and not have not be the employer, but could it be an employee? So you got to be careful with the language of that they have to have employees under them, because they may not be the employer. They could be an employee if they're brought in as an LTE upon the death or injury or something of the owner or the original LTE. So you got to be careful with that language, is what I'm saying.
It says employed by the licensed tree expert,
Well,
which I'm assuming means that somebody's on payroll.
But if the licensed tree expert could be an employee of the company, like the owner of the company dies, and the wife says, I want to keep owning this company. I don't want to sell it. And she hires an LTE to supervise it. They would not be his employees. They would still be the employees of the company. That's what
That's what the bill does say, is employed by a company that employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight. So that would be covered under this bill, as I understand it.
Well, that's not what they were saying earlier. They were saying they had to have employees under the LTE. That's what I'm.
Well, it's one of four things, Delegate. It is employed by the licensed tree expert, employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight, is employed by a company that employs a licensed tree expert who can provide oversight, or is a licensed tree expert. So I think that's covered under what you said. Delegate Ruth is going to have the last question, and then we'll figure out how we want to move forward at another time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just I've been listening to this discussion, and I think to somebody's point about that that these things are scheduled possibly well in advance. I don't know that we want this kind of work continuing for weeks if after the death of someone, given how dangerous it is. And so I'm good with the bill as it is. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else feel the same way or feel comfortable with moving the bill as, I'm sorry, is there a desire to move the bill as is?
I'd be glad to make a motion if that's.
I think we're going to have to adopt the amendments first. What's that, Patrick?
Sorry.
I was saying exactly what you just said.
Okay.
I'd like to see the amendments.
The amendments are
I'd
the.
like to see a reprint of the bill. I'd like to see a reprint before we vote on it.
There is a reprint.
There is a reprint. I sent it. No? Delegate Jacobs, I would love to give you a minute to look at that because everything we were talking about, it was actually printed as of the 27th. We just, I think, glossed over it last time. Leslie, can you make sure? Yes,
I got the reprint now.
you do. Well, I'm gonna give you a minute to look over it because
And for the record, these are the same reprints we were looking at last week. Nothing has changed.
Fair enough.
Madam Chair, I just want to say I'll second the amendments.
Okay. All in favor of the amendments to HB 612, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second.
Amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any still?
No,
Two opposed. Okay.
I'm a no.
You're no. Okay. Thank you so much. All right. According to Patrick, 5:30 and 7:23 are together. Is that what you said, sir?
5:30 with the amendments that are being offered includes all 720, House Bill 723 with all of the amendments that are being offered includes all of House Bill 530.
Got it. So we're amending 5:30 on to 723.
No, we don't even have to. It's already in it.
Oh, so are we, is 5:30 going to be withdrawn?
I don't know.
All right. So do we want to go over 723 briefly, and then we'll get to, let's go over 723.
I could go through the amendments if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay, this is the Forest Conservation Bill, Delegate Love's bill. We heard it last Wednesday, I believe. And the amendments massage the language that states the policy of the state. They bifurcate the state policy into increasing acreage of forest land and land covered in the state covered by tree canopy. Two different things, two different goals. The amendments explicitly exempt from the Forest Conservation Act orchards and tree farms. They also exempt forest management, which I think is just making explicit what was implicit before. There is language to exclude from Forest Conservation Act work on transit-oriented developments in Charles and Prince George's County and construction of new federal government facilities that are expected to employ at least 5,000 people. I believe that's the new FBI building. And then there's required notice to neighbors of clearing of priority retention areas that are within 300 feet of the boundary of the property. And also an opportunity to comment. strikes the current formula for calculating reforestation under the Forest Conservation Act. And I do have one question on that for CBF.
Stegman, are you on?
Yeah, I saw Matt and Eric on that.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here, as is Eric Fisher.
Requires priority retention area, 2-to-1 ratio for replanting.
Mhm.
And then for the transit-oriented developments, 1/4 acre for every 1 acre removed, half an acre for preserve for every 1 acre removed. And then
Hey, Patrick, can I ask you a favor?
other projects, 1 acre for every acre removed.
I'm sorry. Yes, Delegate Stein.
I'm sorry. I just want to ask could Patrick refer to the page of the reprint?
Do you want me to pull up the bill? I can
That would be really great if we could look at the bill while he's going through
I
it.
can do that. Yep,
Thank you, because I'm trying to follow along and it's hard.
no problem.
For the record, I'm on page 6 of 13.
Pull up my screen. I don't even have that. Here it is. Okay. Tell me where you'd like me to go, Patrick.
6 of 13.
Okay, here we go. 6, 1 more.
Yep.
There it is.
Okay, you can see in and in paragraph 1 provides for the general 1-to-1 ratio of replanting. Paragraph 2, Roman I, provides 2-to-1 for priority retention areas. And then paragraph 2, Roman II, which just disappeared. Oh, there it is. That's for transit-oriented development in Charles and Prince George's County. It's 1/4 to 1.
Can I ask why that's limited to 1/4 to 1? That seems low.
Probably because I don't know exactly why. Maybe CBF can answer a little better, but it seems to me like there's a lot of transit-oriented development coming into those two counties down the road, and they don't want to discourage that.
Right. Can we get CBF to answer, and then we'll go to Delegate Terrassa.
Yeah, Eric, do you want to take that one, or would you like me to?
Sure, Madam Chair. There was a equity concern expressed by those two counties, and it was specifically around transit-oriented development. So those two considerations combined led to this proposed amendment.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Delegate Terrassa.
Okay, well, now I have a question about that. What was the equity concern around the those specific transit-oriented development? Is that true for all transit-oriented development? I guess that's a question for two different people.
Sure. I think there was a concern expressed that Prince George's and Charles County have been excluded from this type of development to the extent that other jurisdictions have received it in the past. And so it would be inequitable not to provide some sort of provision for that at this point.
I'm sorry, just to follow up, they haven't been allowed to do transit-oriented development in the past?
Not a legal restriction, but a functional limitation based on where development patterns have historically, where investment has gone first versus now.
Okay, and then I guess this is for Patrick. I thought you said something about transit-oriented development generally. Is this is the only exemption for these? What happens with the other transit-oriented development?
Well, right now, they're not included.
It's
That
just
doesn't mean
this.
that can't change.
What do you mean they're not included?
Right now, it applies only in Charles and Prince George's County.
Okay, so what happens in the other transit-oriented development?
They're not included. They are the 1-to-1, or if they're in a priority retention area, 2-to-1.
Okay. Okay, and then are there other exemptions? You went through them. I don't know if they were in the first.
Yeah,
few
we actually didn't finish going through the bill. I think he stopped at this point.
Oh, well, okay. I wanted to know from before this, but okay, that's fine. I can wait.
Okay.
Well, that's the last of the exemptions that are being added.
Okay, maybe after we finish, you could go back and tell us what the other ones were. I had trouble following it.
Patrick, can we just
I can go through it real
go back?
quick.
Yes.
Figure out what page I'm on here.
It was, I think we started with the orchards and tree farms was one of the first exemptions.
Right. Orchards and tree farms were the first one.
And that was on page, let's go down. There we go.
Yeah, see, this isn't actually even in the exemptions area, but yeah, the first one was orchards and tree farms. That was discussed fairly loudly at the hearing. And the second one was for forest management, which I think just makes what was implicit explicit. And then the third one was for TODs in Charles and Prince George's.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Patrick, you want to finish going through? Tell me what page you would like to move to.
All right, we're on 6 of 13.
Okay.
7 to 13 is just tweaking the stuff related to the reforestation. And then we go to 9 of 14, where it limits the use of qualified conservation to meet up to 50% of afforestation or reforestation requirements instead of the 100% previously. And
So it goes down.
Go again to some of the priority retention areas are moved out of the need for a variance. And this is something I wanted to ask Eric about because I wasn't quite sure what the reasoning here was, but I know there is something.
I'm sorry, where are you again, Patrick?
This is on page 10 of 13. A lot of the priority areas for retention were under the need to get a variance, and they were moved up to the area where you had to just show that reasonable efforts had been made to protect them. And I was just wondering, because CBF had written these originally, and I didn't know the exact reasoning behind this. I know there is some.
I can answer sort of broadly that question for you, Patrick. So just for the benefit of the subcommittee, between the bill hearing last week for this bill in the House and the bill hearing in the Senate for the cross-file the following day, we had extensive conversations with a number of the other stakeholders, including the Maryland Association of Counties, some of the individual county governments, the builders, DNR and others. And so the package of amendments that you drafted, Patrick, that is at least the partial product of some of those conversations, and trying to get some clarity for different groups. And Eric can kind of talk more specifically in detail about any of the individual ones, but this package of amendments as a whole it is not just the work product of CBF, but of kind of the full gamut of stakeholders that came in for this bill when it was heard by the full committee.
Thank you, Matt. Patrick, you want to finish going through it and then I can close out and we can have discussion, and then definitely not doing much of this, but once to give everybody clarifications, and then we can move on to 983.
Okay. Whenever a department or a local authority, depending on how the programs are structured, authorizes clearings for priority retention areas, they're required to issue written findings and justifications. And then we go to page 12 of 13. That there's some limitations added to where mitigation banks may protect, which had in some form had been earlier in the bill in the first reader version. And then finally on page 13 of 13, this is language that came from House Bill 530. They extend the time to finish a mitigation. Require DNR to update a technical manual and establish a work group to evaluate and recommend incentives for private landowners to conserve forest. And that's the amendments as of now.
Thank you. Let me.
And I know some of them need to be tightened up. And
okay. Okay. So with that, we'll go to Delegate Ruth, Delegate Jacobs, Delegate Stein, and then Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I feel really stupid because I just feel like I'm not completely tracking everything here. But could we go back first of all to 7 of 13? So this allows a local jurisdiction to continue to do preservation banking as long as they have a plan to have no net loss of forest cover. Is that what I'm understanding right?
To result in a local program at a minimum maintaining its existing level of forest cover over a 2-year period. Is that what you're talking about?
Right.
Yeah, I think that was it.
I think some of these alternative programs already exist.
I mean, I guess it just seems to me like this is potentially expanding the, the preservation banking, which, we have not, I mean, we've tried to limit that. I noticed, I think earlier in the bill, one of the amendments changed the goal of not losing, and I can't find it now, sorry, no loss of forest cover, changing that to be increasing. Yeah, here it is, increasing as measured every 4 years, the acreage of forest land. And so if we're saying the goal is increasing, but then we're allowing local jurisdictions to use mitigation banking when they're only maintaining, that seems like a problem to me. Does that make sense?
I don't think these are just alternative plans. I don't think there's a lot of, I mean, the alternative plans will probably include some mitigation banking as much as allowed by law. But, and then I think, Eric, there's somewhere in there that talks about this.
I mean, I think this also is, I think if I'm reading this correctly as well, local governments and planning, with planning and zoning, adopt their kind of own forest conservation thresholds and afforestation and reforestation requirements as a part of its local forest conservation program, that are more stringent than the forest conservation threshold.
But it's not just afforestation and reforestation, Madam Chair, it's preservation also, where they can have, this land where there's already trees that they're just preserving. And it just seems like that's not helpful if we're not increasing the forest canopy also.
Don't forget, preservation only gets you half the credits.
Okay. I just have concerns about the fact that their local plans if I understand right, can maintain the forest canopy, but there's no requirement that they expand the canopy. But I have other things I'm not sure about, but there's a lot of other hands up. I'll let.
Yeah, we're discussing. It's all good.
Yeah.
Delegate Jacobs,
Thanks.
Stein, then Terasa.
All right, so you basically are combining 530 and 723. And I noticed that Farm Bureau was favorable on 530, and they did not submit. I don't see anything on 723, so I'd like to ask Colby if the amendments that have been talked about this evening address your concerns in this bill as well.
So the way I'm just watching through, I mean, I haven't had a chance to fully just absorb all those amendments, but I guess I would ask, I think we're still at a 2-to-1 for the preservation side, which is which is what House Bill 530 was addressing, was to allow those existing projects that were hung up in limbo because of the Attorney General's opinion, and then the way the Tree Solutions Act bill was passed. Those projects never got to be completed, and so the way I'm reading the bill, both bills, is that it takes out that honor before December 30th of 2020 language, and allows those projects to continue, and actually allows more projects to be done if they want. But the problem that I think both bills have, that I think one of the individuals that objected to both bills was that it created a qualified project language, and they said that the qualified project is basically the thing that's being developed. The property is being developed where they're removing forest and have to do a fee in lieu of, and it basically says that no more qualified projects can be done if they weren't approved by December 30th of 2020. I think that's page 3 of the bill.
Well, the qualified
page 2.
projects are out.
So line 25, or what page is that? That's I'm sure I'm the right bill. So that was page 4, lines 14 and on. Are those out?
Yeah, that's out. That's all out from line 14 to
I don't believe
20.
there's anything to do with the date December 31st, 2020 left in the bill.
Okay, so did they define qualified projects?
They
that
do.
would be
They took it
eligible?
out. They took it out.
So there is no is there any projects that would qualify for a fee in lieu of that basically, which what we're calling a qualified conservation?
The conservation of all or part of an existing forest that has been approved by the appropriate state or local forest conservation program for the purpose of establishing a forest mitigation bank.
Yeah, so if we created a forest mitigation bank and we had landowners put their existing forest, preserve them in the banks, is there projects allowed to use that program?
Yes,
okay.
It says has been approved.
All right, so we're good. That takes care of our problems.
Okay. All right, Delegate Jacobs, anything further, sir?
That's good. I want to go eat steak.
Yes, I'm moving as thoroughly as I can. Delegate Stein and then Delegate Terasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick, just to get back to, let's see, the amendments on page 10. So priority forests, in the original bill, priority forests could only be cut down for development if a variance was issued. But now with
There were different kinds of priority forests. Some were after a variance and others were up above under the reasonable standard.
Okay, well.
And now they're all moved into the reasonable standard.
Is the reasonable standards defined by, let's see, the department or a local authority will issue written findings and justification for any clearing? Is that the requirement?
Well, that is a requirement, but I think the lead-in has the best language, which is actually current law, that reasonable efforts have been made to protect them and the plan cannot reasonably be altered.
Where is that?
That's the lead-in. It's actually on the bottom of page 9.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, all right, so the current standard then remains, plus the department or a local jurisdiction will have to issue written findings and justification.
Right.
Is that right? Okay,
And this is for priority retention area, which is the
Right.
items listed above that in Roman numerals.
right. And then I'm still not clear about any changes to the mitigation banking for banks established after the end of 2020. Looking at page 12, it says after December 31st, 2020, mitigation banks may be allowed only on land for which development or subdivision rights have not been. I mean, that language is from the original bill.
Right.
So is that still saying that mitigation banks approved after 2020 can only mitigation banks
Oh, there
set
is
up
that.
After 2020
2020
may be
can
allowed
only be
only.
authorized if it's on its land for which development has not been materially extinguished from it, et cetera. Is that right?
Yes. That's how I see it. Read it, Patrick.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Delegate Stein?
Yeah, no, it's just that on page 12, the language about mitigation banks, it says for, I guess, banks approved after end of 2020 can only be approved if they're on land for which development, I mean, 1, 2, and 3 apply.
Right.
Okay, otherwise mitigation banks can't be used.
That's my reading.
That's
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna have Delegate Tarasa with the last question. We
Okay,
still
thanks.
have questions about this, and then I want to move on to 983.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I thought, am I wrong? I thought last year the committee decided that these mitigation banks were not satisfactory and we were phasing them out. So this seems like it adds in quite a few different areas where you can use mitigation banks, and these 3 that are listed, one of which I don't understand, but I can understand that later. And also if a county wants to create a plan to do that. So am I?
I feel like that is not how I read it, Patrick.
I don't, the county could, yeah, it says in the new language that the county can use a mitigation banking. And it says here that the state could use mitigation banking.
Right, and then didn't we last year say you couldn't, like we were phasing it out after December 31st? So this is really opening that back up in a number of areas.
The December 31st language went back to 2020.
Okay, but regardless of when it was, we said
It was the
that,
Attorney General's opinion that shut it down.
right, but I thought that, I guess what I thought is that we were phasing those all out. The question was like, as of what point? But we were phasing all of them out. And this appears to add a number of areas where you could go back and now you can use mitigation banking.
I think it was only the preservation banking we were phasing out.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I mean the preservation banking.
Okay,
I apologize. That's what I mean.
okay.
And then the related question, and so I want to know, I understand that before I vote on it. And then I guess the related question is on page 10, the top of page 10, I think it is. I don't understand what it's saying about streams and their buffers. What does that mean there?
That's making sure that's including them in the priority retention areas.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So there's a lot of questions. Let's get through this, work through this. If there are other questions, please reach out to me and or Patrick and or maybe some of the individuals on this call that can make some clarifications. But what it sounds like, and Patrick can correct me if I'm wrong, according to CBF, is that a lot of these amendments came from those who testified on the bill, both, I guess, favorable or favorable with amendments to kind of create what we have now. That, yes, sir. Yes, Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say, we, as Patrick mentioned, some of these amendments still will require some additional cleanup. One of the things we are planning to do and look forward to sharing with the subcommittee is putting together an explainer of what the amendments are and how they work. It's a little bit of a confusing bill just because it goes in order of where the things fit in the code, not necessarily where they fit if you're thinking through this piece by piece.
So that would be very helpful for us, because it's getting to that time and we need to make sure we understand and vet everything thoroughly, but also get it out of committee should it need to get out. So
yeah, we'll get that to you as soon as possible.
All right, so the next bill, thank you, Matt, so much. 693, look, we were in committee a very long time about this. And so I really want to spend about 10 minutes, 15 at the absolute, talking about it. But I want to respectfully hear from the sponsor first. If there's any, has there been any rumblings, any discussions about this bill? Because as I see it, the bill is not unfavorable in any way, other than that one provision of this bill, which is it's a point of contention, and some of us get it, and some of us, it's kind of over our head. So I wanted to give you the opportunity, Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so 983, a few updates for everybody. I'm like I said in my testimony, I'm working hand in hand with my Senate cross file, so I'm definitely following her lead and working together here. So as far as amendments go, we're putting in a handful of amendments. First one is the sacrificial crop one that was proposed by, I believe, the Farm Bureau and the grain producers. So we're putting that one in. That one's no problem.
What is that?
Also, it was a provision that specifies that some of the added revenue that DNR receives goes towards a program that will help farmers plant sacrificial crops, which Delegate Ziegler, you can probably explain a little bit better than I can. But it has to do with protecting, from deer and animal damage in general.
Yeah, just very simply, there are, we only do it with soybeans. There's a type of soybean that puts more energy into leaves and stems, and they grow very tall. They grow much taller than the other soybeans. They don't yield as well. And the deer, and you plant them on the outside rounds of your soybean field, just like, maybe 3 feet thick. And the deer eat them as opposed to the soybeans that you're hoping to harvest. So for farmers, that would be a big part. So the idea is cost share. So it would be part of the mandated program to manage deer, which for farmers is all about managing crop damage.
Right. Colby, do you have anything to add about that part? Sorry, I saw you pop up.
Ziegler hit it on the head. It's just basically we call it a sacrificial crop, but in DNR it's called a habitat planting on private lands. So it qualifies under the USDA matching program. So they're allowed to use that money to plant habitat within the WMAs and the other areas on state-owned land. And we're just saying, hey, the private-owned land is where they're grazing as well. Let's offer some cost share programs. That's what the bill does. That's what that amendment does.
Thanks, Colby. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, and then a second amendment after discussion again with my Senate cross file, we're striking the language in there that Delegate Love had expressed concern about regarding the exploration of directing DNR to explore the possibility of closing state parks on Sundays for deer hunts. So we're not gonna put that on DNR. That's, if someone wants to try that later, that's a different bill. So we're striking that language. And then finally, thanks to the excellent questioning of our vice chair, we worked out, we figured out what would be best as far as the opt-in, opt-out portion. We're going to specify an amendment that is an opt-in on the part of the county governments. So it is 100% up to the counties if they want to do that. So yeah, that's what we're working on now. You know, and then based on whatever our discussion, wherever our discussion goes, you know, I'm willing to continue conversations and see what else we need to do.
Good job. Thank you so much, Delegate Stein, Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to thank the bill sponsor for his work on the amendments, especially with respect to giving the designated counties the ability to opt in to the Sunday hunting. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs.
Well, this opting in is just another, it really doesn't change the bill, the problem of Sunday hunting whatsoever. And by opting in, the counties that don't opt in lose those days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not fair. You got 5 members on this subcommittee that don't allow Sunday hunting in their counties to begin with. 2 from Baltimore City, and only 3 members of this subcommittee that actually have a dog in this fight over Sunday hunting. Now, Sunday hunting is a serious issue, and I live in a county that's the 3rd highest kill county in the United States of America. And my outfitters are more concerned about conservation than they are revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that this committee, with the stance they've taken historically on Sunday hunting, would be more considerate of this than to just say opt in or opt out. This needs to be taken out of the bill. It doesn't belong in this bill. It's a separate piece of legislation, as far as I'm concerned. And I do not support anything that continues to have any option, opt in, opt out, or anything to do with Sunday waterfowl hunting. I think that is a dangerous precedent that you may lead into a moratorium very quickly with the additional, next year being the additional goose and additional days on a Sunday could cause catastrophic damage, in my opinion. We've seen it happen in recent years, and we're just getting back to where the population has increased. The breeding pairs have increased a little bit. If you talk to the outfitters and talk about what kind of geese were killed this year, they were mostly all adult geese. There were very, very few juveniles. So you should do some biology work before you go any further as well. This is a dangerous precedent. I'm totally adamantly opposed to this Sunday hunting issue. And I think it's a dangerous even avenue to go down. And I'm really concerned that we have this many members that don't even have the idea of having Sunday hunting in their county. So what difference does it make? You can't have it to start with. Let's put it in all the counties if we're going to do it, even the counties that don't have Sunday hunting. See how you like it.
Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with Delegate Jacobs. And, I think I have opposed the other Sunday hunting bills, but I understand that those bills, when you're talking about deer hunting, we are trying to reduce the population. And even though I oppose those because of the recreational aspects, and everything, I think it's clear that with deer, it's a matter of reducing the population. With these migratory birds, that we need to preserve the population, and allowing additional hunting on Sundays seems to me a real problem. And so I will oppose this bill if it continues to have that provision in it. And I do appreciate the sponsors opt-in amendment, because Baltimore County does not allow Sunday hunting. So I appreciate that the sponsor has put that in. But I think even with that, I would not support it because of the population issue.
If I may, real quick, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just to address one of your concerns, Delegate Ruth. I wanted to get into this, but it was, of course, really late Friday night, and it's really late tonight. The calendar, the hunting season calendar, when we're looking at allowing Sunday hunting, it's not necessarily, especially in this case, it's not adding additional days. It's still the same amount of days, because when Maryland has always disallowed Sunday hunting, so the federal government gives us an additional number of days on the back end of our hunting season, so it actually extends the season currently, because the Sundays don't count. So that's when people were talking about the compensatory days. That's what we're talking about. So we lose those compensatory days in exchange for getting the Sunday hunting. So it's the same amount of hunting days, but it's squished into when the opponents were talking about pressure on the population, that's what they were talking about. It's the same amount of hunting days squished within around a 45-day period, rather than stretched out to a 60-day period with those Sunday days off in the middle. Does that make sense?
Delegate Ziegler and then Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I agree with Delegates Ruth and Jacobs. I just wanted to say that for the record. I also really love the rest of the bill and want to thank Delegate Allen for bringing in for his openness to amendments. But I am concerned about the outfitters' concerns, really, about the bird species. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I share the same thing with the waterfowl hunting on Sundays. That's a real concern that needs to be taken out of the bill. But I also have concerns about sick deer and the provisions that you're adding, making that more complicated. Because I have them in my county, and I have them in Dorchester County, and I don't think they can be more devastating than the whitetail population on there, and we don't need to make it more complicated for them to be harvested.
Can you explain where in the bill that this is being discussed so we can all take note?
Well, I shared with the bill sponsor. I saw where it was listed, having to get an additional stamp and this, that, and the other, making it more costly and expensive. And I think Dorchester and Somerset County are the only places that have the sick deer right now. There might be some in Wycomico, I'm not sure, but.
Can we let the sponsor answer?
So yeah, thanks, Delegate. The Sika deer stamp, the institution of that, again, the idea is this is a species, like you said, it's unique to even certain counties within Maryland. I think there's only a handful of places in the United States that even exist, and Maryland's the only state in which they can be hunted. The deer stamp to which you were referring, this will be the first of its kind, and that's a $10 stamp. That's a $10 fee for residents, and then $25 for non-residents. So again, the idea is that we're leaving revenue on the table when it comes to attracting out-of-state hunters and people who want to come and see this the unique wildlife in Maryland. And like we also said, this goes for not just for this, but for the fees being raised across the board. Again, they were last raised during the first Bush administration in 1989, and as a result, we're leaving federal money on the table. For every, I believe it's every dollar that we bring in, the feds match, I think, $3 thanks to the Pittman-Robertson Act. And right now we're just missing out on that by not updating these fees. And yeah, so that's kind of what the thought process was with the Sika deer. I understand, not all hunters, not all residents would be thrilled about the institution of new fees or higher fees, but I think a $10 resident deer stamp is fairly reasonable. Thank you.
Well, I don't think so. It's my money and not yours.
Sure.
Delegate, tone, please. He's explaining the bill. And I do want to say that no, you can't Sunday hunt in Baltimore City. That does not mean that I don't care about this issue or care about the individuals affected. So I want to make that clear too. I guess the question I have, and maybe that it'll help all of us who have questions about why is Sunday hunting even in this bill? And if it is removed, does it remove the state's ability to get those federal funds that we've been talking about, that we've been left on the table?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to answer your second question, no, it does not necessarily change that aspect. You know, the additional federal funds will still come in as long as the fee increases and all to which we referred, remain in the bill. But the idea behind adding the Sunday hunting provision for migratory game birds is, again, to give the hunters and the hunting community something, to kind of give them something in return, first of all, for, in exchange for raising the fees. I think a lot of people understand that, it's been a long time since those fees have been updated, and they understand the necessity, but, this might be the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down a little easier. So that's part of it there too. And the second part behind the Sunday hunting, the mentality, we discussed this at length, I think, on Friday, but just as a refresher, the idea is to increase opportunities. That's, again, kind of the overarching theme of this bill. Despite how all of our conversations have gone, the Sunday hunting is not really the main focus of the bill. The focus of the bill is increasing outreach and opportunities for people to enjoy sports in outdoors. And, for someone who works 5 or 6 days a week, and for a student who's in school 5 days a week, we're effectively doubling the amount of days in a year that they're able to hunt migratory game birds. So
Yeah.
that was the kind of the genesis of it, was
But
the increasing of opportunity.
so just for clarity though, if again, Sunday hunting in general has nothing to do with the kind of like the goal of the bill per se.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair to say? Because you mentioned it's a give. It was a give in exchange for raising the fees. And I guess if that is the rationale, is there something else that could be given that's not potentially Sunday hunting? So these are just questions. And so Jen and then Delegate Jacobs will be the last question, and then we're gonna close out.
My question's super fast, so I'm sorry to take up one of the questions, but and I don't know if it was the sponsor or somebody said something about Sika deer, that Maryland would be the only state, or can somebody clarify? I must have misunderstood.
Yeah, Maryland's the only state that allows the hunting of Sika deer, to my knowledge.
Okay, all right.
They're an invasive
That's what I thought I
species.
heard then.
I think they're Asian in origin. There's a few spots in the United States to which they've been introduced, but Maryland is the only one that has a population that is large enough and invasive enough to actually be hunted and managed.
Oh, okay. So we have more than others, and we allow hunting in there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Terrassa. Delegate Jacobs.
There's absolutely no sugar needed in this bill.
Okay.
There's the fees have not been raised for 34 years. No one in the hunting community is opposing the increase in these fees.
I disagree. Delegate Otto just opposed it.
Well, Delegate Otto was talking about Sika deer in his county, but you heard no testimony whatsoever about the increase of fees in that bill. Everyone was in favor. The big issue was Sunday hunting, period. There's no sugar needed. No one came in. There's no trade-off needed. This has been going on for 4 years. And I'm going to say this, as an avid hunter, mark my words, this is a mistake to think about, because we had a moratorium not many years ago, and the industry has never gotten back what it lost. What was lost in those 6 years has never been restored. And I don't think this is a bad idea. And people that are in the areas where the larger amount of migratory birds are killed are asking for conservation over the revenue. And I would hope that this subcommittee would listen to that.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to end on, we get a lot of hunting bills, and I'm hoping that the subcommittee starts thinking about bills in the sense of quote unquote conservation versus killing contests or for the sake of adding another Sunday. And I'll put that plug there for us to think about. But thank you for this discussion. It was certainly robust. And we have some work to do. So next week, I'm hoping Delegate Allen, within the week, we can see some of these amendments and continue to talk about this Sunday hunting provision, which is the stick of this bill. I mean, it just is. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people respectfully don't care either way, but we all care because we have to make a decision. And thank you all so much for participating. Thank you for our guests for weighing in. We certainly appreciate your time and your consideration and just sticking around just in case we need you. We will see you next week. And as more bills pump out, we're probably gonna have to have more than one meeting a week, probably to just get some bills over the crossfile. So I would ask you to do some studying. I know it's crunch time for many different committees and subcommittees and bills and your own bills, but let's do some homework and let's come back and let's have some great resolutions so we can push through some really good bills. Good job and great discussion. See you guys later.